Coach, a county agent with the LSU Center, Ag Center, and we'd like to welcome you to the tropics. We've decided to devote an entire show of our Get It Growing with the Lafayette Master Gardeners to growing tropical plants. And we have two Master Gardener tropical plant experts with us today. We have Miss Peggy Voorhees and Miss Janae Foley are going to be taking us through our tour here of this beautiful display that they've put together.
Now, obviously, as you can see, tropical plants are colorful. But what, Peggy, is a definition of a tropical plant?
A tropical plant is usually beautiful foliage, large, colorful flowers, or palms. And they require specific growing conditions, and those are usually thought of as above freezing temperatures. Since Louisiana, and our area specifically, is in Zone 9, we are lucky enough to also have the Gulf close to us that our freezes don't usually get below 25 degrees. So we are very fortunate that we can grow most of these beautiful plants.
Now, what happens? Here's the situation. When our local weatherman says, well, folks, it looks like we're due for a freeze.
Well, the freezes that really concern the tropical plant are those that come out of Canada, those fronts that come down really quickly and bring extremely cold temperatures, usually below 20 degrees. In that case, it usually happens around Christmas time. If you're lucky enough to still have your Christmas tree lights out, go wrap them around your plants, stick a bag over them, and that'll keep them warm and protect them. I've done that with these beautiful bird of paradise, and it's kept them growing ever since.
I've used mulch, too.
Mulch works good.
If you've got some extra lying around, you can kind of scoop some over some of the lower stems of your plant. That seems to help some too. At least keep the plant alive.
Exactly.
So that it'll come back for you.
Another thing that we're fortunate to have in our yards also are microclimates. And I think that this is an important factor because often we're so afraid of cold weather. But for instance, I have a very delicate palm tree, which is a lady palm, and she's planted on a south-facing brick wall, and she's doing just great. Never have had any problems with dieback even. So microclimates are areas in your yard that actually stay warmer than you expect them to because of either a large live oak that's protecting it or a brick wall that protects you from the north wind, etc.
Right. You might want to look for areas where you have a fence coming into a brick wall is usually a good, safe place for a plant too. It may be just those critical degrees that'll keep it thriving rather than have some dieback.
Another interesting point too is that plants don't really feel chill factors. You know, when you talk about chill factors by wind, that doesn't mean anything to a plant. The actual true temperature is what matters to that plant.
Y'all bring up an interesting point, and just to tell a little story, we have a lady in South Vermilion Parish that has an avocado tree that's been growing for 20 years, and a few years ago she made about 2-3 bushels of avocados, but that tree was very protected. It was kind of in the corner of her house, and it did quite lovely, but if that tree had been in the middle of her yard, it would have never lived those 20 years to produce an avocado crop. So sometimes you'll see strange things like avocado or pineapple growing in little microclimates like that in people's yards, but usually not out in the open. They won't survive.
That's a good point. And isn't it wonderful to think that you can grow an avocado and eat it on your own table?
And a pineapple too. You actually can. We've got one about this big right now. I'm really curious to see if it'll keep developing and you can whack it off and eat it or not. One group that we want to be sure and talk about today, which are the backbone of your garden, are the palms.
This is true, Janae. The palms are the trees of the tropical garden, and there are many varieties that we are fortunate enough to be able to grow down here in South Louisiana. An important factor about palms are that there are two main leaf shapes. This is the palmate leaf shape, or palm as in a hand. This is the pinnate leaf shape, or as in a feather, a pin feather. So palmate and pinnate. When you're ready to landscape in your yard, it's real important to kind of have an idea of what type of leaf shape you would prefer for your palm. Different varieties. This is the lady palm, as I'd mentioned earlier, our bamboo palm. We can grow this down here. Also, the palmate leaf shape that I just showed you is the Chinese fan palm, a relatively inexpensive palm that can be bought at several nurseries in town and actually grows very well in the ground over here. When they're young, they do much better in shade than they do in sun. I have one that's about 3 years old, and it's already probably 6 feet with its palms out. So they're very easy to grow in the shadier areas of your yard. Sables also grow well here. I know you've seen those around town a lot. They have the leaf bracts already on them in a crisscross fashion. Another excellent palm that grows down here, as is Canary Island date palms. And if you'd like to see examples of Canary Island date palms, there are two young ones growing outside of the cathedral in Lafayette right now, and they're absolutely beautiful palms. Probably one of the hardiest palms grown in South Louisiana, can survive hurricanes much better than any water oak. So this is a good thought, too, if you're thinking about replacing those water oaks that blew down a couple of years ago. Canary Island date palms, sable palms, all excellent plants.
Okay, and we can't forget the staple of Louisiana palms, which is our sago.
Oh, yes. But there is a little bit of a difference between a sago palm and a regular palm, and that is that a sago palm, and I'm sure you recognize this leaf as being that of the sago, is actually a cycad. It's a gymnosperm. It's from the gymnosperm family, which is the same family as pine trees. Sagos are very interesting palms in that they are dioecious, meaning that they are different sexes. You either have the female, which you see on your screen right now. This is a beautiful example of a female palm. If you have this in your yard, you have a female, or the male. And we're going to see a picture of the male. There's the male right there. The male flower, obviously letting us know that this is a male plant. If you have both of these in your yard, you will be fortunate enough to produce a lot of red seeds within the female. And you need to know that these plants are poisonous, so please do not let your dogs get around them because it will injure them. But that is one way to propagate. If you only have one sex in your yard, either male or female, there are ways to propagate these sagos, and they can be done by division or by cutting them off of the plant, and it's best to do a very clean cut rather than just breaking them off. And you want that clean cut. Take a sharp, straight spade, slice down, and let that cut callus over. That means it has to get hard so it can then develop a new tissue system which will produce roots for you. Another very important point about divisions of sagos are that there are root systems called coralloid roots, which are close to the surface of the sago. These roots look like little pieces of coral, and they're designed to produce a bacteria which takes nitrogen from the air and delivers it to the root of the sago. This is very unique to the plant. So when you're dividing those sagos, take some of that earth that's around the mother plant and bring it with you into the pot, which is mixed with just sand. Actually, you don't need much other mixture, and your plant will do great. You will produce a beautiful sago.
And go back to talking about the seeds, you actually can plant those seeds. If you want to work with it, they're huge seeds. They're about the size of a 50-cent piece. You need to nick the seed coat, and you can put it in damp vermiculite, just in a Ziploc bag. It's going to take it probably a couple of months to germinate, and then you treat it after that as any other plant. But you actually can, have 25 little sago palms coming along if you want to use all those seeds.
Another interesting point about sagos that a lot of people ask us about, Janae, is mine is so big, can I prune it back? Absolutely, whack it back. From underneath, remove those leaves. Try to plant it where you can allow the good 6 to 8 feet that it needs. That's important. People think these little sagos will stay little. They don't. A good time to prune back a sago, and I find this very amusing and it gives me a good thought, is during Palm Sunday. So if you want to give some palms to your church, you can go ahead and prune up those underneath palms and bring them to your church. I'm sure they'll really appreciate it.
We might also want to mention, we were talking about this a little earlier, how it's important not to damage the growing point in a palm.
Oh, a growing point in a palm, that's an excellent idea, Stuart. The palm has a spear leaf, which is the main leaf coming out of the palm. Palms basically are like a big straw, if you can imagine that. And out comes this one shoot. It may just be this big, the little leaf, where your whole palm leaf itself may be very huge. But if you destroy the spear leaf or bud of your palm, you have killed that giant 15-foot palm. So it's really important to protect the spear leaf. Another important thing to protect on palms are the trunks. They're not like trees. If you nick it, it is not going to save it. It's not going to repair itself. It's crushed, it's damaged, and it will not repair itself. So be careful not to damage the trunks of your palms, and especially that spear leaf. Those are two very important parts of palm trees.
And that's, especially when you're removing freeze damage foliage, just keep that in mind. Some, I've seen people, they just get carried away, and they, the next thing they know, they're cutting and they've topped back that plant.
can't top a palm.
Gone. It's gone. So remove that dead stuff, but just protect your center there. What type of diseases do these sagos get? I mean, I think they're a relatively hardy plant.
Well, we get a lot of calls on sagos. People bring them in, especially they have a lot of problems often with scale. And there are some really good insecticides, like there's products containing imidacloprid that work well at controlling scale. Also, sometimes you'll have problems with the leaves yellowing. I find especially when we have a lot of wet weather, if they're planted in a poorly drained site, you'll get a lot of yellowing in the leaves because they're not able to access some of the nutrients. Their root system's not working properly. Some of the magnesium and the manganese in the soil may not be able to be taken up by the plant because the roots aren't functioning. But if you're having some trouble, always look at the drainage. If you go along Johnson Street right now, I've noticed they have planted a lot of palm trees, and they really are making an effort to plant the palm trees up really high. They put them on a big mound. Maybe you can mention a little bit about that in planting palms. How would you plant a palm tree, and then what type of mortality would you expect when you plant one?
I'm going to talk about that, but I want to remind people out there, if you have a question about anything we're discussing right now, please feel free to call us. We'll be glad to answer your questions as we go along. On palms, everything that I've read recently is that you basically dig a hole and try not to amend too much. What you want to do is use the same dirt, just like we're recommending on trees or shrubs that were originally in the palm. But they do suggest that you plant it high. And another excellent point is, once you get that root ball, and palm tree root balls are rather tight and small for the size of the plant that you're going to get, you want to make sure you water it in really well, because air pockets can really injure the root system of a palm. Once you get that in, then you want to mound up your dirt to allow for good drainage.
And that is a change. Talking about, just to clarify, for a good while, people amended their soil when they were planting a special tree or something that, that they had spent quite a bit of money on. They would use potting soil thinking that, this is going to help those roots get off to a good start. But unfortunately, that's not true. What happens is the roots stay right in that wonderful soil and won't branch out into nearby soil. So that's a change, in planting techniques that's come about in the last few years. They're saying now, don't put the potting soil in there. Use more of your original soil in that area.
Stuart,
I think we have a call coming in on line 1. Welcome
Sorry,
to Get It Growing.
line is busy.
Hello.
Welcome to Get It Growing.
Yeah, I've got a question about the sago palms you were talking about. I've got one in the front yard that I would really like to transplant. I'm kind of afraid it's surrounded by a lot of other foliage and it's old. Can you give me any idea what the safety factor would be if I wanted to move that thing? And it's in half of the day it's in sun, half in the shadow, and is it important that I keep it lit about the same way? I'm going to hang up and let you answer. Thank you very much.
This is the perfect time of year to transplant your sago. Most people do not plant things in the summer, but palms love it. So this is the perfect time of year. You need to dig a relatively large root ball. You'll see where those roots are. And remember those coloroid roots. Am I saying this right? It looks like a little piece of coral. And you'll see that near the dirt. So you want to get that in with your plant also. I suggest that you cut back a good 2 rows of your palm leaves, tie it up with just a light twine, take out a big shovel. It's going to be hard to do, so work the best you can to get it out. In some cases, you may even need a backhoe to dig it up. It depends how much it weighs. I don't necessarily know if you want to rent that. But if you have a couple of buddies, that helps too. Put it onto a large tarp if you're not going to use the backhoe, and use that tarp to bring it wherever you want to. If you're moving it to a sunnier spot, that's okay. It may suffer a little bit of yellowing in its leaf system, but it's basically going to be all right. They can take pretty much full sun. Needs excellent drainage. Do not amend that hole too much other than just breaking up your soil real well. If you feel like you need to amend, add peat moss, some good coarse sand, and a little bit of topsoil. Fertilizing, I just use a basic 888 and water it in real well. That should take care of it. Mulch it up good too.
And we talked a little bit about the yellowing, and just to mention that we talked how sometimes they'll turn yellow from poor drainage, But also in some cases, if you're a little low in the soil in magnesium, you can add a little Epsom salt around them and
That's a
try
good
that.
suggestion.
That's
Let's
an
do it.
inexpensive thing that you can put. And usually it's about a tablespoon per square foot is kind of the rate that you'd want to go with.
So would you just throw it down or mix it
Right.
with water?
You can actually just throw it down around the plant and then water it in. And magnesium is really important for plants, and especially some plants like palms seem to benefit from them. And we can have low magnesium soils here in Lafayette Parish.
You know, a while ago you asked me about mortality. I did lose a sable that I tried to transplant, and I believe it was probably lost because of nutrient deficiencies. I haven't found any disease on it. It could have been that the little spear leaf was damaged in transportation, or it could have actually been that the root ball was not done very well.
And I guess what scares me, I have gone to some talks where even some companies that plant palms professionally, sometimes you can have mortality rates up to 50%. And
Well, that makes me feel better.
Right, right. And if you're spending, in some cases, thousands of dollars are spent. I even went to one talk where they were talking about $20,000, $30,000 palms that were being moved into, a mall project or
And
something
still
like
lost.
that, and still lost, even with the best of care and special equipment not to damage the trunk. So they can be tricky when they're quite
We have
expensive.
another phone call.
Line one.
Line one.
Welcome to Get It Growing.
Yes, we tried to plant a bunch of those sago palm seeds, the big ones, and we didn't have any luck getting anything to sprout. I want you to explain again maybe some thorough techniques and when's the best time to plant those big palm seeds.
Okay. What I was talking about was you're going to need to nick that seed coat, and it's probably like a 1/16 of an inch. And some sources say use sandpaper or a file. I mean, you'd be filing away all day. Get some big clip, like even wire cutters. And you don't want to, go down into the seed. You just want to get that little seed coat off of it, and you'll see the difference in colors. The outside is kind of that orangey red, then inside it's more of a yellowy brown. And you're going to have to do that. Now, some people, I haven't tried this, but just put them outside for a year and let the weather take care of nicking that seed coat. And just keep an eye on it till it's going to get brown and thinner, and then try planting it. But we've had really good luck at the greenhouse. And it does take about 60 days. I mean, this doesn't happen, in 7 days like a typical seed.
I hope that answered your question.
If it didn't answer your question, call back or come by. We are at the greenhouse, the Master Gardeners Demonstration Gardens, on Wednesday morning from 8:30 to 12. If you have a question, the Master Gardeners are there. In a lot of cases, these seeds are there too, the sprouted ones. We can actually show you, some of the things we've done.
Janae, we need to tell them where we're located.
Okay, we're on the side of the Blackham Coliseum.
Coliseum Road.
Coliseum Road, and there's a little white house next to the Coliseum. Our greenhouse is directly behind that.
We're on the same property that our Nelson Horticulture Center is located on, and so if you're familiar with Blackham Coliseum, the our Nelson Horticulture Center is to the right, and you take the Coliseum Road in between.
Right.
You'll see a small shell road, and we're located there. We have several demonstration gardens, including a tropical demonstration bed that has most of these plants that we're mentioning today.
I know one thing we wanted to talk a little bit about was our big event of the fall is our fall plant sale. And I know Peggy and Janae are both real involved with our fall plant sale. We're doing a plant swap in conjunction with it.
Right.
Maybe we can just touch a little bit about on that, maybe some of the tropicals that we'll be offering.
Okay, we have
Gingers.
Many gingers. We're going to talk about gingers a little later in the show or in a following show. We have the white, the peach, the yellow. We have some of the globas. And what else? We may have some bananas. I'm not sure about that. You'll have to come see what we. It will be probably the last weekend in September.
It's September 25th, I believe, is the date.
September 25th.
And if you had an opportunity to come last year, you need to know to come very early in the morning because we sell out quickly. We have over, I believe, 1,500 plants to sell, but we were sold out by 11 o'clock. A lot of our own things that we grow in our yard, we bring over there for propagation. So you're going to have the opportunity to buy some very, very nice plant material. Our next segment of this same program, which should air next month, will also be on gingers and a lot of the gingers that we're going to be selling.
And the plant swap is held in conjunction with the Master Gardener Sale. It'll be at 10 o'clock in the morning on the grounds. It's going to be a little further down the gravel road, but we'll have people directing it to you. And for that, you need to bring, if you're interested in the plant swap, one rooted plant with brief growing instructions. And you will get a ticket. We draw numbers in groups of 10, and you get to go in and select a plant.
You get great plants that way.
Yeah, for free.
Let's talk a little bit about bananas,
Okay.
since we only have a few more minutes left in our program. This is a beautiful flower from the Musa ornata. And this leaf here, I hope you can see this, is Rojo, another banana that grows down here beautifully. And this also is Super Dwarf Cavendish, which is interesting. A lot of people say, oh, we have these tremendously huge bananas in my yard and I'm worried about them. But this banana leaf, which I'm going to put here, okay, here you go, there you go, you got it. See how little it is? That's full grown. These guys only get to be about 3 feet tall. Super Dwarf Cavendish. A lot of this plant material can be purchased in New Iberia through Stokes Tropicals, but a lot of it can also be purchased through the Master Gardener's Fall Plant Sale, so make sure you make your way down there.
And our fall plant sale this year, I believe, will be going from about 8 to about noon. And the plant swap is usually around 10 o'clock. And I really enjoy both the plant swap and the fall plant sale, because one of the things it gives an opportunity for people to do is to come look at some of the plants that we're offering. And then also, very often, they'll bring plants from home that they have questions about. And we encourage you to do that. If you have a plant you'd like to get identified or you have some questions on how to grow it, feel free to bring it to the fall plant sale. We'll have a lot of master gardeners there on September 25th to help answer your questions.
This is another beautiful flower that was sold at our fall plant sale. This is Texas Star Hibiscus. Definitely a tropical, but just lovely. Look at the size of these blooms, just gorgeous. I'm not sure if we're selling these this year, although we may be. We are selling these this year. Texas Star Hibiscus, anybody can grow this tropical. It's so easy to grow. You just stick it in the ground and it goes crazy.
And there's a beautiful new solid white variety of that we're propagating. We won't have it for sale this sale. But do stop by, too, and look. The Master Gardeners have, 7 or 8 demonstration gardens by our greenhouse. They're themed gardens. All of the plants there are labeled. Because of all the rain and the lush growth, some of the labels are sort of underneath the plant. But if you know what a plant is, dig down there and find the label.
Janae, let's show them this beautiful bird of paradise. Okay. This is one of the plants that we are growing at our tropical gardens. You can grow this in your yard. In fact, this comes out of my yard. Bird of paradise, a lot of people are afraid to grow thinking that it's truly tropical in nature. But if you can see this plant, this is a double blossom plant. And it makes a beautiful leaf that has a red midrib. These plants can take it down to about 25 degrees. And 1 year, 2 years ago, we went down to 23. I was really worried I lost them. But just by simply covering them up with a plastic bag and then taking it off the next morning, I saved it. And they are just wonderful. Bloom best, I think, when they're root bound. So if they're in a container, they'll do better. And I do suggest the south side of your house. We do have some of these in the demonstration garden, and I hope that they're blooming when you get a chance to visit.
And there's also a white variety of this. You know, we've talked about purchasing these plants. Look in local discs. I purchased a white variety on sale one time because nobody knew what it was. A wonderful plant, just as a foliage plant. The bloom isn't as striking as the orange.
You know, price is an interesting thing when you talk about tropical plants. People think they're so expensive, but this is one thing Stuart and I discussed earlier. Instead of buying annuals for the summer, which look great for about a month and then slowly peter out, you can buy tropicals, and they're just going to get even better as the summer goes on. The hotter, the better.
Well, we're kind of reaching an end of our show today, and I think we had a lot of great information. I think we're going to try to take one last call. Welcome to Get It Growing.
Hey, I just called in a minute ago about the sago palm, and I appreciate the answer. This is a great program. My next question, I have several banana trees, if I can kind of divert to banana trees, and I would like to split them and kind of create a hedge effect, about a 50-foot long hedge effect of these banana trees. Can you maybe give me a little heads up on the timing? Should I do that now or later? And can I plant them real close together? I know they're kind of clumps the way they are right now. I've only got 4 or 5 in this clump. How do I break that out and make a wall of banana trees, if that's an appropriate question?
They're the taller banana. I mean,
They're huge, yeah.
yeah, what we're going to call the
8 feet tall.
generic bananas, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I don't think you can kill them.
No, early.
Now, you don't know me, but I could
No.
appreciate that help.
You want to split that pseudostem. It looks like a big rhizome. Just split it into pieces and take the smaller ones and move them now. In the early summer is better, but actually you can do it right now and it won't hurt it too bad. I wouldn't wait much longer. You want them to be able to go through the winter.
I'll do it this weekend.
Good. Good luck.
That's great. Appreciate the help. Great show.
You're welcome.
Keep them watered if we don't get rain.
I think we're just about out of time for today's show. We want to thank you for joining us on our program called Get It Growing with the Lafayette Master Gardeners, and we appreciate all the calls that we had come in today. I want to thank our guests, Ms. Janae Foley and Ms. Peggy Voorhees.
That's it.
You can talk.
We did good. We got calls. And we got real calls.
I think 2 of them were Ed.